Hi, welcome back. Certainly glad you could join me today. You got your old brush warmed up and ready to do a fantastic little painting? Good.
History happened everywhere. Hello, my name is Ryan Weir, and I'm here at the HHE studio with the oh man to my oh man. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
I was thinking before this show, are we going to make the oh man joke? And you've opened with it.
Oh man. Now, Peter, last week the Derzolator randomised us a treat for episode 92, painting in Oman during the Great Recession, which was 2007 to 2009. So, assuming that we have both brushed up on our research skills and haven't drawn a blank, why don't you easel us into the show by revealing the Monet shot? So we can paint the town red. By which I mean, please inform the listeners about what's in store for today. Thank you.
That was painful. Right, Ryan, we are off to the Middle East, to a country perched at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. We're going to learn about frankincense and bullfighting, and we're going to talk about painting during the time of the financial collapse. We'll meet the artists whose Omani-infused creations were proudly presented in a recession-proof gallery, and we'll visit an area where the painting on walls goes way, way back, for literally thousands of years. Welcome to the oldest independent state in the Arab world. Welcome to the land of peace. Welcome to Oman.
All right. Well, Peter, I've got the impression this is going to be a good one. So why don't you set out the landscape by orienting us to Oman?
Can I just clarify whether these puns are going to go throughout the show, or is there an end point here?
That's it. That's all I scripted.
All right. Well, let me frame our situation here, Ryan.
Hooray!
I'll join in for one. Now, we're talking about the Sultanate of Oman officially, which is on the southeastern coast of the Arabian Peninsula. So, if you look at Africa, there's kind of a sticky down rectangle to the right. It's the bottom right of that sticky down rectangle, and that is the mouth of the Persian Gulf.
Or Arabian Gulf.
And that is the mouth of the Persian or Arabian Gulf, depending on who you're talking to.
Yes, indeed.
Now, Oman, Ryan, is about 309,500 square kilometres, or 119,500 square miles, making it 56% the size of France, so you're going to need nearly 2 Omans to make yourself a France.
Okay, that's a decent-sized country.
It's chunky, isn't it? The flag of Oman is a red vertical bar on the left-hand side, or the hoist side, with the national emblem of Oman picked out in white.
Okay.
The rest of the flag is 3 horizontal bands of white, red and green, which are the colours we typically see in the Middle Eastern region for flags.
They love those colours.
They do indeed. Now, I mentioned the national emblem. You're wondering what that is, I'm sure.
I am.
It is a khanjar on a belt superimposed over 2 crossed swords.
Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned a khanjar, so you're probably wondering what that is as well.
That's what I was going to ask, yeah. What's a khanjar, Pete?
A khanjar is a curved dagger, very traditional of the area. There are khanjars across the Middle East. The Omani khanjar is quite interesting because it has, rather than just a gentle curve like a crescent moon or a crescent shape at all, it's almost a right angle on the scabbard. The knife itself isn't a right angled knife, though. It's just the shape of the scabbard is distinctive to Oman, apparently.
Okay, so it's not a can and a jar.
It is not, no. It is
both things for storing foods.
No, it's just a regular old belt knife.
Okie doke.
It's a pretty complicated design, though. I wouldn't want to have to draw it if I was in a Omani school.
Just stick with the colours, right?
Yeah, do the colours and then just sort of a hazy sketch of some kind. Now, let's talk national anthems, Ryan. Salute to the Sultan.
Salute to the Sultan.
Salute to the Sultan. We're going to listen to it now.
This is good old standard fare national anthem. It's very serious.
This was first composed in 1932, so maybe that's why in those days they took everything a lot more seriously.
Yeah, it's got that sort of British military feel to it.
It does, doesn't it? I think it was written by a British chap, in fact, or at least the music at the time. The lyrics, though, were rewritten in 1970 because the late Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Said came to power and they wrote some new lyrics for his tenure, if you will. Then they changed them again, though, when Sultan Haytham bin Tariq succeeded Sultan Qaboos, and he issued a decree changing the last 3 lines because they made some pretty specific references to the late Sultan, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. be happy, caboose has come, may heaven bless him, be cheerful and commend him to the protection of our prayers, to so ascend to the apex of the heavens, illuminate the cosmos, rejoice and relish in prosperity.
That's a good use of vocabulary.
I like the new version better. I'm going to put it out there.
Controversial.
So there it is, National Anthem. Hope you enjoyed that one. Oman facts. I have Oman facts for you, Ryan.
Hit me up, Pete, with your heaviest Oman facts.
If you wanted to go to Oman for the weekend, Ryan, when would you go?
Saturday and Sunday
Wrong.
during the day.
Completely wrong, Ryan, you fool. No,
What do you mean?
in Oman, the weekend is not Saturday, Sunday, but Friday, Saturday, as Friday is actually the traditional Muslim day of rest in the region.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
even that's quite relatively recent, though, because prior to 2013, the Omani weekend was Thursday, Friday. So you could weekend Oman, jump on a flight and have another weekend back home in Britain if you timed it right.
I like the way that your brain works, Pete. You're always looking for an angle.
Always, I'm like, what? It's not my fault I work between Oman and the UK and therefore only do 2 days work a week. Here's another interesting Oman fact, Ryan. A traditional spectacle in Oman is bullfighting.
That does surprise me. You mentioned this earlier in your intro.
Yeah, it was a bit of a teaser. So it may or may not have come from Spain, but it's quite different to what happens in Spain. It's not a man versus bull. It's bull versus bull. It takes place around every other Friday, so the weekend, as we've established.
Okay. Yeah.
And what happens is that it's not a super violent, devastating to the bulls type activity either. It's really different to what you'd expect. What happens is the bulls are brought together and they clash heads, as they, I suspect, do in nature, and they kind of lock horns, and it's much more of a kind of pushing contest.
Oh, okay.
So injury is relatively rare. The bulls are kind of looked after, and the video footage I saw, it was done just in more or less a field with everyone around. And every now and then, the bulls would kind of rampage around, and all the audience goes scattering as these bulls go charging around.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're not generally damaged. It's like I say, it's the opposite of a tug of war, a push of bulls.
I'm perhaps more supportive of bull-on-bull action than I am on human-on-bull action.
Yeah, it's not horrible and scary. It's not loads of bleeding bulls and nobody dies. So it's, to me, much more acceptable form of entertainment to me. And my final Oman fact, Ryan, is frankincense trees grow naturally in Oman. It's quite famous for them.
Frankincense.
They make cuts in the tree and the sap squeezes out, and it's sometimes known as the sweat of the gods, I assume, because it kind of squeezes out in a sweat-like way. It dries into a resin which you can burn for a nice aroma, but it's also believed to have medicinal properties, so you can consume it or apply it as a paste, and it's supposed to fix everything, as these things often do in the olden days.
Sweat of the gods. I'm not sure I like that. It implies that gods have other bodily fluids.
Well, yes, there are some tales, aren't there? But Oman was a significant part of the frankincense trade. And there is a site now called the Land of Frankincense. It's a World Heritage site, but it's not just one place. It includes ports and parts of where the caravan route would go. And it celebrates the trade that went on from the 4th century BC and onwards.
Very cool.
Even today, Oman has the reputation as producing the very best frankincense in the world.
Which, of course, we all use daily in our frankincense baths.
I wouldn't use anything else.
Can't get me enough of that frankincense. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Ryan.
Do you want me to paint your portrait?
Oh, sure, why not?
Great. Just slip out your clothes and I'll set up the easel.
Alrighty. Wait, slip out of my clothes?
Yeah. I paint nudes.
Ryan, I'm not getting naked in front of you.
Fine. Keep your clothes on.
Okay, good.
Okay, here we go.
Ryan, is this going to take...
Done.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah, so what do you think?
Ryan, this is an ugly old man.
Yeah, I paint what I see.
A naked ugly old man.
Yeah, I paint what I see.
And what's that little snail about?
What snail?
That little snail there.
Oh, that's your Winky.
My what?
So do you like it?
No, I think it's rubbish and I think you're a terrible artist.
Oh.
I mean, ignoring the tiny Winky, which is completely inaccurate, by the way, why do I have a mullet and a tooth missing?
Artistic interpretation?
It looks like a wanted poster for the neighbourhood pervert.
Ah, well, that's art for you. It's all subjective.
It's not subjective, Ryan. This is just rubbish.
Look, maybe you're not seeing the deeper meaning, Pete.
Deeper meaning? Okay, fine, enlighten me.
Well, the flowing mullet, that represents your wild spirit, and the missing tooth, well, that symbolises the hardships you've endured.
And the snail?
Well, I mean, that's a metaphor for,
My tiny penis?
Exactly. See, now you're getting it.
Right, destroy this and never paint me again.
Fine. Stupid critics.
Okay, Ryan, I've done my part. I've told us where we are, but now I want to know about the history. What have you got for me?
Well, I have history for you.
Great.
So around 100,000 years ago, in that southeastern corner of the Arabian Peninsula you were talking about, early man was roaming around.
Ah, he loved that, didn't he?
Now, around 10,000 years ago, Oman is the location of one of the world's earliest cities. It's a place called Al-Wata. But around 3000 BCE, the region becomes known as Magan, and it rises to prominence among ancient people over thousands of miles thanks to its rich copper deposits, which it trades to civilizations in Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley.
Spare a copper for an old leper?
Now, centuries pass, Pete, and Magan finds itself under the influence of the various Persian empires. We first see the Achaemenids, the Parthians, and the Sasanians follow, each recognising the region as being sort of particularly important as a stopping point on the multiple trade routes across the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, having nice things is very much a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's you have nice things, and you also have a lot of neighbours who want those nice things.
Yeah, being able to transport nice things means other people want to transport your nice things too. And in the 7th century, Islam starts to sweep across the Arabian Peninsula, and in Oman, the locals there, they adopt a particular branch of Islam called Ibadism, which advocates for a community-led form of religious leadership, and that sets them apart from the Sunni and Shia majorities that we're perhaps all more familiar with. But not in any recognisably bad way. Even the Prophet Muhammad said of the Omanis that God's mercy be on the people. They have believed in me, although they had not seen me.
Nice. The heart is true, and that makes you a good person, and that's good for Muslim, I guess.
I guess so. Bear in mind, it's not just spice that they're transporting, they're also transporting religion.
Ah, yeah, there's always ideas packed in the hold as well.
Indeed. So in 1154, a new Nabhani dynasty takes over, which isn't a great thing because they bring a lot of instability to the region through sort of bickering and infighting. And that sort of takes us up to the 16th century, or rather the early 16th century, when the Europeans arrive. And it wasn't the Spanish, Pete.
No.
Can you guess who it was?
Was it the Portuguese?
It certainly was the Portuguese.
Oh, they get around. They get around.
They do. They rock up on the Omani shores under the command of Alfonso de Albuquerque.
Really?
Which I'm pretty sure is how he said his name.
Very certain.
Yeah. And he captures Muscat and he builds a stronghold there. Now, they hang out there for about 100 years and they build forts and they control the trade routes, despite some frequent uprisings from the locals. Now, eventually, in the 17th century, the Yoruba dynasty appears and they succeed in kicking out the Portuguese and they usher in a new golden age of maritime adventure. They take the Omani Navy out of the Middle East and they head west to Eastern Africa, where they spread down the coast, trading spice, claiming the lands for their own, building mosques and forts and palaces. Now, by 1749, the Yoruba dynasty turns sour, and after some in-house conflicts, a new dynasty emerges, Pete, under the leadership of Ahmed bin Sayyad, whose family continues to rule Oman to this day.
Ah, that's a long-rooted dynasty.
It sure is. Now, in the 19th century, Oman expands again, and this time using Zanzibar as a vital outpost on the African coast.
That is one of my favourite place names in the whole world.
Zanzibar.
Sounds exciting and swashbuckling.
And a beautiful place too. I don't know if you've looked at it, but crystal clear waters and white sands. They picked well, did the Omanis. However, this does bring them into conflict with the British Empire.
Oh, that rarely ends well for Team B.
Well, in this instance, it ends reasonably well for them, because to avoid violence, treaties are reached between the two, which means that the British end up in the position of protecting Oman for a bit of a fee.
Yeah, we've got form on that score, haven't we?
Good old protection racket. Now, the 20th century kicks in. It's a time of challenges and more change. Sultan Syed bin Taimur's 40-year reign being mostly remembered for his efforts in trying to isolate Oman from the world and doing little to sort of modernise the country. But that changes in 1970, Pete, when he's overthrown by his son.
Oh, that's ungrateful.
A guy called Sultan Qaboos. And that is a bloodless coup, though, Pete, which is always a good thing, I think.
I think so.
Now, under his management, we find roads, schools and hospitals being built. We find Oman transforming into the vibrant, forward-looking nation that we see today. His reign lasts until his death in 2020, when his cousin, Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, he ascends to the throne instead. And that brings us to today, where we find Oman looking to diversify itself out of just selling oil and gas. I recommend spice. It's done them well in the past. Maybe some copper. I don't know. But they're looking to build a sustainable future for their people, one which honours its cultural roots, but also acts as a beacon of stability in the Middle East. And for those reasons alone, I wish them all very much well.
Absolutely. In my research, I mentioned at the beginning, it was called the Country of Peace. In a potentially unstable region with oil revenues in particular, it's kind of a beacon of stability, isn't it, in the area, was what I was turning up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, on my researches, I found this to be very much one that I would like to have a look at. I wouldn't mind nipping down to Oman and checking it out.
Oh, me too. I'll be going soon.
All right, see you there.
I'll see you this weekend.
Which part? My weekend or your weekend?
Yeah. The weekend.
A pre-2013 weekend or a post-2013?
It's going to be a long weekend.
Oh, dear. A nice Omani woman called Barbara drove a car so very far to Zanzibar. She went to open up a brand new Ruba bar to sell to folk who came along from near and far. In Zanzibar, Barbara, she parked a car and found a place to live above a big bazaar. And there she ran herself a lovely bubble bath. And abracadabra, the Ruba bar by Barbara, she bobbed about a bubble bath above a big bazaar in Zanzibar.
Alrighty, Peter. Well, look, you have fully oriented me. I've given you some background to the history. I tell you what is missing, the time period. Can you tell us a little bit about the Great Recession, 2007 to 2009? What's that all about?
I can indeed. The Great Recession refers to a period of global economic woe. You probably could have guessed that much. It started out in America. There aren't exact dates. These are economic phenomenon. There's not a stamp that goes, this has started and this has finished. But broadly, as we've said, 2007 to 2009. And in this time, the US experienced the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1920s. And much like then, it brought a lot of the world down with it.
Sure did.
It was very much felt around the world, and it all started in the US housing market in particular. Now, I'm going to try and give you a summary, but it's very complicated and other people might disagree with this, but this is sort of headline analysis that will give you some idea of what happened.
Plenty of documentaries and movies been made about it.
Quite so, yes. The headline, though, is that people were offered mortgages that they couldn't necessarily afford. There was a lot of loose credit based on the assumption that houses would keep rising in value. These became known as subprime mortgages because could people pay them back? Well, they could, as long as house prices keep rising, as long as people keep taking out more mortgages, as long as the interest rates remain low. This is a sustainable system. Guess what happened?
Did it not sustain?
It did not sustain, but at the same time, financial institutions were creating new investment vehicles which were essentially packaging these mortgages up into mortgage-backed securities. And then they invented another thing called a credit default swap, which was kind of like an insurance policy that said, well, if these guys don't pay their mortgage and default, instead of you taking the hit, I will pay some of that as well. So everyone's leveraging all of this mortgage debt in various different ways. So there's this big pile of people all making a lot of money as long as this sustainable thing happens.
Right.
That sustainable thing ceased to sustain.
Right.
Interest rates started to rise. People couldn't pay their mortgages. They defaulted on payments. That triggered the credit default swaps. They couldn't afford the default swaps either because they had too much of their money tied up in this whole business. And essentially everything fell apart. The investment bank Bear Stearns nearly went to the wall and needed to be bailed out. And then more dramatically, and I think iconically, the Lehman Brothers, which was an investment bank that had been around since 1850, was wiped out. Not quite overnight, but certainly over a period of months. It went from major player in investment banking to literally bankrupt, the biggest bankruptcy in US history to this day.
We're talking multiple billions, right?
Yeah, I read an estimated loss of the value of between 46 to 63 billion.
Yeah,
and that was just one bank. And then, of course, other banks were also involved. They were also affected. Didn't necessarily go bankrupt in the dramatic way that Lehman Brothers did, but a lot of people lost a great deal of money. The shocks triggered through the financial systems of the US and the rest of the world. And long story short, 2 or 3 years of recession, known as the Great Recession, which I have to say, I was there, was not as great as the name suggests. Kind of sucked.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of money, not a lot of work, and everyone was a little bit scared about what would happen.
Plenty of images of people walking out of their jobs shops with a cardboard box full of things.
Lots of investment bankers with boxes of staplers wandering out of the door, as you say.
Yeah.
Now, if you do want to learn more about it, you could do a lot worse than watch the movie The Big Short. That stars Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, and a host of other famous people. It's an excellent, excellent film that kind of tells you what went down. And I should warn you, if you do watch it, by the end of it, you will be furious. It's a really good watch, but yeah, it's not relaxing and calming by any stretch of the imagination. But that is The Great Recession.
Wasn't that great though, was it?
It was terrible. I didn't like it at all, and I would rather not have another one.
Yeah, let's not have another one, everyone. Stop buying 100% mortgages.
Some of them were more than 100%, if I recall rightly.
What? Well, that was cheery, Pete. Thanks for that.
No problem. I didn't pick the time period. Could have been the super crazy fun times of the 1980s, but no, we had to pick the Great Recession.
Yeah. All right, hang in there, everyone. Got some more fun stuff coming up after this.
Oh no, I've lost my house. I need to find £1,000 to keep a hovel over my head. Mr. Bank Manager, can I please borrow some money?
No, you can't afford it. Eat peasant.
Oh.
Oh no, I've lost my bank. I need to find 100 million billion pounds to keep a mansion over my head. Mr. Government, can I borrow some money?
Oh, of course you can. How much would you like?
All of it. Thanks.
So, Ryan, I'm really intrigued. This is a very short time period. The specific topic is painting. I'm keen to know what you dug up in your investigations.
So let me take you back to the year 2000, and an art gallery opens in the heart of Old Muscat. The gallery is called Beit Muzna, and it has the mission of promoting established and emerging artists in Oman and from abroad. It has a relaxed atmosphere, a delightful cafe, and a series of thought-provoking events and exhibitions, and it quickly cements itself as one of the most respected contemporary art galleries and art consultancies in the region.
Art consultancy? That's an interesting concept.
It is indeed. Now, that art consultancy is basically a team of employees at the gallery. Artists, consultants, designers, framers, carpenters, all of them have been employed to help people find new and interesting work.
Sounds great. I'm always looking for new art.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these are for like private collections or for businesses. There are people out there that's looking for new and interesting art to show off. Now, in doing this, the gallery regularly welcomed talented artists from around the world, all of whom are known for their collections of Omani-inspired artwork. As of time of recording, in May 2024, the Beit Muzna is currently exhibiting a suite of fine art photography called Lesser Spotted Oman by Irish artist Clive Gracie.
Lesser Spotted Oman, I like that.
Yeah, that's a good name. But in recent years, they've showcased a variety of works from other established artists, including paintings by Rashid Al Khalifa, the Sheikh of Bahrain, ceramic sculptures by British artist Peter Hayes, drawings by the Albanian-born Ghazmand Kalimi, an exhibition featuring local calligraphy, and many, many, many others, including, Pete, exhibits during 2007 to 2009.
That's our period.
Which brings me to the meat of this section, because of all the artists who exhibited their work at the Beit Muzna during the time of the Great Recession, a couple of notable individuals stood out to me. The first is UK-born Karen Carpenter, not the singer.
Thank you for not making me say that.
Yes. Now, she presented a collection of paintings, charcoals and pastels at an exhibition at the Beit Muzna Gallery in 2007. Karen's work is primarily concerned with the aspects of the human figure. Her work uses a compelling range of themes and techniques to invite the viewer into the unique world of Oman. Now, unusually, Karen's collection features portraits of Omani nationals drawn in serene and dramatic moments, but all seen from behind. The backs of people's heads, essentially. And she uses these bold, broad strokes with a vibrant palette to help convey the folds and the movement in the fabric of traditional turbans and hijabs. Now, I really like this, Pete, because it's an unconventional approach. It's really unusual to see a portrait of someone from behind.
Yeah, that's not normally your main direction, is it?
No. It seems we're so used to seeing faces that to be presented with just the backs of people's heads, you're asked to think sort of almost more about who this person is, imagine who they are, where they're going, what life they've led, and so on. Anyway, I was intrigued enough about her work to reach out to Karen, and she agreed to talk with me about her artwork and her experience in Oman.
Nice.
And this is what she had to say.
All right. Well, I'm called Karen Carpenter. I'm married to an architect, and he was sent to replace the senior partner of an architectural firm. So we went out to Oman in 1996. I was only 4 years into my 5-year art degree. Didn't know anyone when we first got there. Not many people. He did, obviously, business-wise. And we went to somebody's house for supper where there was a lovely photographer. We hit it off immediately because we had a passion for animals, particularly dogs. And having met her great day, we became great friends. And she wanted to exhibit, and she lived in a very Arab house, huge spaces. So we had a joint exhibition in her house, and she obviously had lots of contacts. And it went down very well. And basically, this lovely friend Julia, that's probably where it all started. And then, word got around, and I did an awful lot of exhibitions there, actually, which was wonderful.
I always admire these people who adventurously go, and then I moved to Oman one day.
Yes. I thought, what must it have been like being in Oman then? But it turns out that Karen actually moved to Oman a lot earlier than I anticipate, back in the 1980s. So I asked, what was her impression of Oman like when she moved there? And this is what she had to say.
Well, we went in 1981 first for 4 years. And that was a culture shock. And my husband showed me pictures of barasti huts in the desert, and he said that's what we were going to live in. Well, being very naive, I actually believed him. We didn't live in a barasti hut. We lived in a Taylor Woodrow bungalow, and we lived in a place called Medina Caboose, and all the houses were exactly the same. And it was lovely because there was no posh houses. None of us. We all had the same houses, which was very nice and very even for everyone. And we used to go to the souk and, and Rui High Street was a place we went to where tourists don't go anyway. Very useful for getting art supplies and things. All lovely people, Indians, a lot of Indians. And goats would be wandering in and out. You'd go into the souk and you'd go down a little dirt alleyway and there'd be goats wandering. And I remember taking a friend there, and she had to take smelling salts with her. She was a very classy Irish lady, and she couldn't bear the smell. I mean, it was all part of Oman. We didn't mind, but it was.
Much like the wandering goats of Croydon High Street.
Yeah, I was just going to say Croydon Market's a bit like that, isn't it? I often take smelling salts to Croydon Market.
Has a certain rugged appeal, I must admit. That sounds great. I was struck when she talked about the huts. Actually, my research suggested that the change in Oman between 1970 and the next decade was mind-blowing.
I imagine.
And that actually the lifestyle did go from actually everyday people living in these basic huts to what we would recognise as modern living.
But look, Pete, we're here to talk about art in Oman, and so I asked Karen if she wouldn't mind telling us a bit about how her artwork was received there.
All right.
And this is what she had to say.
But I was concentrating on the body, actually nude most of the time, which is what I wanted to do. And of course, in Oman, Arab countries, you're not allowed to exhibit things like that. So that was a bit of a problem. So I had to sort of rethink and do clothed people for a change. So people with clothes on. But then I did do quite a few private commissions of people without their clothes on who'd come to my house and, lie on the spare in bed, and I'd have to take hundreds of photographs of them. But they were obviously private. And there was one Omani we knew who wanted me to paint his girlfriend in the nude, but he wanted her to pose with her clothes on. And I was to imagine what she looked like without her clothes on. I didn't do that. It was a bit too madly. But as I say, I've always loved painting bodies, so that was a thing. I'd go to shopping centres and I'd suddenly see a beautiful Omani, and I would approach them and say, can I take a photograph of you, and use their heads or whatever, their back as a thing when I went home. Because I love the fabrics and I love the folds, and every so often somebody would say no, but mostly they didn't mind because, again, they were from the back. I wasn't doing portraits. But I had to think of something because they don't like representational art. Originally, I thought if I just do women in abayas, they'll just be black triangles, and men in dish dashes would be white triangles, not terribly exciting. So let's concentrate on that bit instead. Although I did have to do the first Omani partner of Price Waterhouse. I was commissioned to do a portrait of him. So obviously he was from the front in all his, and he was wearing a yellow turban, I remember. And I thought, oh, this would be a very good advert for me because it'll hang in the office. He took it home, unfortunately. But so saying, I did sell work to a lot of Omanis, so it must have resonated somewhere along the line, I think.
That's an interesting story about the sort of necessity being the mother of invention there. You talked about the interesting aspect of these views from behind, but actually driven by a very practical consideration.
Yes, adapting to your environment and respecting the culture of the people that you're living within. Very sensible, I think.
I would say so. And now I want to see some.
Well, I will make sure that we post them on our social media, and I would recommend that if you do want to find out more about Karen and her work, you can go to her website at karencarpentersart.com. I would avoid Googling Karen Carpenter. It does bring up a number of other searches first.
Yes, I'm surprised the website isn't Karen Carpenter's, not that one, art.com.
Not the singer.com. Yeah, look, it was a delight talking with Karen, a lovely lady. She was incredibly kind to give me her time, Pete. She lives in the UK now. She teaches art, and she is available for commission, she says. She focuses on the human figure, naked, optional, I guess.
Podcast portrait, you and me. Nude reclining.
There you go. So KarenCarpentersArt.com.
All right, I'm going to check it out.
Do it. Now, following Karen at the Beit Muzna Gallery, a year later in 2008, was an exhibition of paintings by George H. Lewis. This is another talented British artist whose work stood out to me, in particular for his exploration of the cultural and historical tapestry of Oman. His work, which most often features Omani landscapes rather than portraits, uses a blend of traditional and contemporary elements to sort of capture a feeling of the Omani heritage, in what I think is pretty much a striking and ethereal way. Now, George has had an extraordinary experience in the Middle East. He lived there throughout 2007 to 2012, during which time he lived with Bedouin tribes in Saudi Arabia. He lived in Kuwait, he travelled through Yemen and Oman, where he had the pleasure of being the court painter to the Sultan of Oman.
Wow.
Yes. So, given all of this, I reached out to George and was delighted when he said he would talk to me. So, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
My name is George H. Lewis. I'm an artist and I'm currently based out of New York City. I'm British, but in some ways I feel I'm a citizen or a patriot of the world. I don't really feel connected to any one country. For me, it's really about humanity and the story of all of our civilizations, and every different civilization has some beauty and meaning. And so for someone like myself, I think I've been to, on the last count, 96 or 97 countries. And I just adore seeing variety in this life, and especially through the lens of the camera or the paintbrush, and more recently through the language of astrology and sound therapy. It's a great way to connect with people.
Bringing people together from all their different cultures and backgrounds. I like that.
George has led an extraordinary life, and he continues to. But I did ask him just to give us a little bit of background to him. How did he find himself a professional artist? And this is what he had to say.
I think I was born in the archetype of the artist. I was always good at painting at school, but now I went to one of these very traditional schools, and in England, I can't say the school life for me in England was what I would have chosen. It was pretty intensely difficult, and at times I really struggled. But art was always something I did. It was never particularly valued at these boarding schools, but I think it gave me great solace. It gave me a great way. It's almost like a meditation, a prayer. I'd go into the art and I'd lose myself in it. And so I always did it. I was quite lucky, though, at university. I did academic subjects, and I did politics and philosophy at university in Italy and in England. And at the end, I was determined to go off and study politics further. I had a place at Cambridge to do a master's in politics. And my father refused to pay for that part of my education. He thought it would be a waste of time going to work for the European Union. And in some ways, he saved my life because he actually supported me as an artist. And I'm fascinated by people. I set up a business in England, in London, but I always painted every weekend when I wasn't working. And eventually, long story short, I plucked up the courage to do it professionally. And then I had this opportunity to go to the Middle East, and I got this great opportunity to have an exhibition in Oman. And that's how that opened up.
All right, I like the casual way he says, and then I studied philosophy in Italy.
Yeah. But as he mentioned there, it did bring him to Oman. So I asked him for his impressions of the country, and this is what he had to say.
I feel I was very well trained for the Middle East. I went to an English boarding school from the age of 7 through 18. So when you go to the Middle East, the separation between male and female, which is so strong in the Arabian Peninsula, is kind of no different from the system that I grew up with. Whether one thinks that's dysfunctional or not is an whole other conversation, but it was very easy for me. And I was also very blessed because I got to meet a lot of the women as well and talk to them. I think in some ways being an outsider, but who had a particular interest beyond a tourist, almost beyond a traveler, because I was based there for a while, one was able to access people on a different level. That's always the case if you look back at history. The tourist is very different to the traveler. And then when a traveler stays in a village for a little while, there is the potential for relationships. And I'm talking close relationships of sharing stories. And so for me, I found it very enriching being able to listen and to share with people who were so different from myself externally, with what they wore, with how they approached God or how they approach food, everything. But ultimately, when you start telling stories, you listen to them and say, really, we're telling the same story. It's just a slightly different color of the archetype. I remember when I first went into the Rubab al-Khali, which is the empty quarter from Oman, with the Al-Rashidi tribe for 2 weeks solidly. That was fascinating, just living off goat and dates and coffee. So for me, it was more about the difference in the landscape and all the people who are so open to me. And they're beautiful people. The men and the women are so beautiful and kind. It's very honorable and they're very polite. But I have such wonderful memories of the Omanis, some of the nicest and kindest and hospitable people.
There you go, goats getting an honourable mention again.
I like a goat. What a life he's lived. It's absolutely as you say. He's definitely drunk deep of the well, hasn't he?
He sure has. But we're here to talk about art, and so I asked George about his experiences in Oman might have influenced that work. And, well, this is what he had to say.
Well, I think my art in my 20s and early 30s was still very traditional, in the sense of I was really painting what I saw. And so let's take Oman and the beautiful colours of the ocean and the rock, that sandstone that is so known in and around Muscat, the Banda Jissa sandstone, and that anyone who goes to that area knows that area with the holes in the rock and the beauty of the afternoon light and morning light hitting it, and then the colour of that azure blue. It's unique. So I was trying to capture that. What made my art a little different is I was grinding up the sandstone and putting it into the paint, which created a pigment to an extent, but it also created texture. So the paintings that I was producing and then selling were quite sculptural, and they carried the actual local rock, and I quite enjoyed that. And then, of course, when I was painting inland, like at places like Nizwa and Al-Ustaq and Ibri and all the places in the parts of the empty quarter and more inland, I was using the sand from there and capturing the heat in a different way. I was fortunate that I had a few patrons. So I had a few local Omani sheikhs who patronized my work, and I got commissions from them. And I obviously did some paintings for His late Majesty Sultan Qaboos for the royal court. And those were mainly paintings of castles and a few Bedouin and camels and stuff like that. If there was a figure, it was a lovely figure walking on the beach as a distance capture of a human. You couldn't identify the face. So the stuff I took, which was figurative, was more private for me, which either I have shared in the West or I still haven't shared with the public. But I have quite a wide range of material and subject matter that I've covered over the last 15, 20 years, absolutely. And some of it is a bit more pedestrian than others. Some of it is more risque, let me put it that way.
All right. Well, I like the idea of mixing the actual land into the landscape that you're producing.
I love the idea of texture in the paint, yeah, for sure. But I have to say, I mean, he has such an eloquent way of speaking, and the way he's able to describe his paintings and the colours so vividly, for an audio podcast where I've struggled to sort of try and capture that, I think he's done that remarkably well.
He did sound like an artist, there's no doubt about it.
Yes, he does. But what was the response to his work? And this is what he had to say.
Well, I think the Omani audience really loved the way I was so enthusiastic to capture the beauty of their land. They really enjoyed also the sculptural, tactile type of the art I was using by putting, the rocks and sands into the painting. But if you look at the great artists of the 1880s, 1890s going off to the Middle East, the Levant and Egypt to paint, I'm just continuing in a long tradition of that. With the local Omanis, they weren't really buying it unless they were the sheikhs, you see. But they so appreciated it. I remember one of the junior foreign ministers, a lovely man, he ended up buying one of the pieces, but he bought half for his family, and we're talking 20 or 30 people. And it was just lovely to be able to share my experiences one-on-one or in the group with them about, this tour all the way down to Salalah. So, it was always fun to share some of my insights of the Arabian Peninsula with the Omanis, who are naturally great travelers. They're a seafaring nation. There's this huge maritime tradition of the Omanis, so they're quite outward looking in some ways, especially their curiosity with the art.
See, I thought that was really interesting, just to sort of get the impression of how the local people would see international artists and their view of their country.
Yeah, I think there was a nice bit of everyone's pleased to be seen. They've got a country that they obviously love, and it's somebody else who could come on and go, well, there's nothing there, there's no trees, or some similar not very educated viewpoint, to actually see the beauty as well must be quite satisfying.
Very satisfying, yeah.
I've also learned that it is useful to have a sheikh on your side.
Always have a shake. Now, look, just to sort of round out the conversation, I asked George whether or not he had any advice for any aspiring artists, and this is what he had to say.
It's a really good one, because in some ways I'm not sure my advice it's not in some ways very practical, because I took a risk in my life, but at the same time I think my karma has supported my taking a risk. I'm always going to push people to become more independent, to become more sovereign, because I know human consciousness is connected to you, me, us finding our individual path, not in a selfish way, but that is consciousness. So I'd always encourage people to pray, meditate, contemplate, whatever you want to call it, and allow yourself to feel into what you're here to do. And we're all practicing that. Doesn't matter which culture we come from, by the way. Doesn't matter whether we're British or Omani. We're all learning to become more sovereign, higher forms of ourself. And so for me, that's what the journey of the artist is to live it and to share with it as we journey through it. I'm discovering as much as anyone else. I'm as much a student as I am a teacher. Actually, the reason I can teach is because I'm still an excellent student.
Some beautiful and wise words there from George.
When are you going to become a higher form of yourself, Ryan? That's what I want to know.
I think I already am.
You've reached the top.
I think I reached the top some time ago.
Ryan ascended.
Yeah, it's only down from here. George continues to paint today, but he's also a healer through astrology and sound healing. He travels the world, delivering retreats that help people transform and step into their highest version of themselves, as he describes. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can visit his website at georgehlewis.com and georgehlewisacademy.com, or you can just follow his page on Instagram at George H. Lewis. Oh, and while I'm recommending things, if you find yourself in Muscat, do go and visit the Beit Muzna Gallery and see their latest collection in person. Alternatively, if you're not in the Oman region, you might want to visit their Insta page at Beit Muzna Official, or their website, which is beitmuznagallery.com. BAITMUZNA gallery.com.
All right.
So there you go. Karen Carpenter and George H. Lewis, two incredible artists who both exhibited their paintings in Oman during 2007 to 2009. I'm incredibly grateful to them both, and I wholeheartedly recommend that you all go check out their amazing work.
That was excellent stuff. Thank you so much to the both of you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, guys. All right, right, Pete. Well, that's me done. What have you found out?
Well, Ryan, I've gone in quite a different direction.
Well, that's a good thing, because imagine if you'd brought two artists to talk about their exhibitions in Oman.
No, I found something quite different. So in February of 2009, so the last year of our time period, there was a chap called Professor Maurizio Tosi, and he had a conversation with another chap called Angelo E. Fossati. He was an Italian archaeologist who, in the current day, teaches prehistory and proto-history at the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Milan, Italy.
That's a conversation I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for.
Well, yes, they talked about rock art, specifically rock art in Oman, and even more specifically, how it would be jolly useful if someone were to capture and analyse some of the sites that have been identified and recorded in the area so far.
Okay, so we're talking what, prehistoric art?
Well, I will come to this.
Oh, okay.
So, cuts to the October of 2009, Fossati goes out to Oman, and he goes out specifically to record and analyse the figures that were sometimes carved but sometimes painted on the ancient rocks that had been preserved for hundreds of years or even thousands of years in the dry desert atmosphere.
Okay, that makes sense. People in the past did like to carve stuff and paint stuff on walls.
And more than just the past. So Fossati studied for 10 years basically, and in 2019 he published a book called Messages from the Past, Rock Art of Al-Hajar Mountains.
Okay.
So in this book, he documents and attempts to understand the ancient and not so ancient art found on these rocks, okay?
Yeah, I like picture books, so this is going to be a favourite for me, I imagine.
It is a very picture heavy, and I was delighted to find that out because it's quite long too. Now, this is a book about petroglyphs and pictographs, which I'm sure you know the difference between, Ryan.
Yeah.
But for the audience, though, who probably don't know, Ryan, petroglyphs are basically carved or scratched or chiselled into the stone.
Scratched or chiselled, yeah.
Exactly, whereas the pictographs, as you know, are painted on.
Painted,
yeah. They're painted on, and both of these can be found across Oman.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about both, but as we're talking about painting, I'll start with that, obviously. So the pictographs of the area are mainly coloured in red, yellow, black and white,
Okay.
which is largely indicative of the materials that were available to be used. And those materials seem to be ochre, which is kind of a natural clay earth pigment.
Yeah, we've seen that in other episodes, haven't we, where people have been painting ochre on stuff.
We have, yes, and there's a mixture of ferric oxide and varying amounts of clay and sand. Give your ochre actually different colours. It can go from yellow to a deep orange or a brown, or if you burn the ochre, after about 300 degrees C, the colours actually become quite red as well. Looking at some of the pictures, you get some pretty deep reds out of this.
So they had quite the palette.
They had not a bad palette. They also used charcoal, which gives you your blacks and your greys, and also, and I'm quoting the book directly here, lime of some kind.
Okay, but not the citrus.
No, not that kind, but yeah, that didn't feel as scientific as I'd hoped, but it's a lime of some kind, I guess, giving you, I would imagine, whites.
Yeah.
And these colours have been painted on in a few ways. So in some places it looked like the liquid paint was applied with some kind of bristle, like a brush, as you would imagine.
Or their beards.
Well, it may have been beard hair, I don't know.
We don't know.
Also applied with a stick seems to be one of the ways things were applied. And some cases it looked like the paint, in inverted commas, was kind of applied directly like a crayon, he says, to use just a chunk of your colour and draw directly on the wall.
Yeah, all of those things make sense.
Yeah, and also, just to mix it up, there is one in a place called Wada Masawa, a printed hand where the artist just covered their hand in paint and applied it directly to the wall.
I like when people do that because I kind of want to go and put my hand on top of it, just feel connected to that person many, many centuries ago.
It's incredibly basic and primal, isn't it, when you see a hand like that? You just want to touch it and just touch across the thousands of years.
Yes, exactly.
So on the petroglyph side, which is carvings, as you know, again, a few different techniques. There's like picking, which is kind of almost rock pointillism, chipping little individual holes in. You're scratching and abrasion. You can imagine, I'm sure you've carved your name in a desk or two at some time.
And a wall.
And a wall, really. Talk about that in your criminal past will be the verdict topic, I think. So, Ryan, you asked how far back this art goes.
I did, yeah.
So Fossati postulates a number of phases, and those phases have some reasonably characteristic things you might find drawn during those times. So the first phase he talks is about 5000 BCE.
That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. He's seeing turtles and sea creatures. He calls them sea creatures as tentacly, possibly anemones. I saw the picture. It's a circle with lines sticking out, Ryan. I'm not going to lie.
Right. Okay.
But he concludes
that could be the sun.
It did look a lot like the sun, so I'm sceptical, but I'm not an archaeologist. What do I know? This takes us to the second phase. This is about 4000 BCE, so we've leapt 1,000 years. Now you're seeing some ibexes and other larger creatures. Ibexes like deer with big horns. And it's in what he calls a 3-stroke style. So these are simple and they're only a couple of lines, but you can tell that it's a deer or a creature of some kind. I really like them. I think they would make excellent tattoos.
Amazing. A 4,000-year-old tattoo.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. Now we're on to the third phase, 3000 to 2000 BC, and these are all approximate, as you might imagine. Starting to see angular stylized humans and the appearance of a dagger in a kind of a distinctive T shape. So you're starting to see, I guess, as the tools and metalwork emerges, so the pictures change.
Yeah, they're drawing what they're seeing.
Exactly. Fourth phase, 2000 BC, now you're seeing people riding on animals. This is the domestication of horses, camels are coming in. And then in the fifth and sixth phases, it starts to get a bit wild, right? We're talking about the period 2000 BCE to now. You're seeing warriors, people riding horses, camels, ostriches, boats, and cars.
Wait, what? Is it a DeLorean?
Genuinely, there are rock art of cars on these wadi walls. This is frequently found on the walls of the wadis, which is kind of the valleys where the streams come when there's water available.
Okay, so this is right up to present day?
Right up to pretty much the present day. Now, that really surprised me, but I guess, of course, people still draw on walls, right? It's almost an eternal human thing. You see something unusual, imagine it's one of the first cars you've seen, you're going to draw it on the wall. And you go, yeah, you'll never guess what I saw today.
Yeah, let me draw it out for you. Yeah, how about that?
So likewise with the paintings you said we'd put on, I will put some of these up on social media so you can have a look at some of these. I'll nick them out of the book.
I'm surprised by the lack of graffiti. The genitalia and such, humans being humans.
Yeah, I didn't seem to get a whole lot of that. There was one which was of a couple making sweet, sweet love, although the rather coy caption said, enjoying social time.
I do enjoy social time.
I may well post that pervy bit of rock wall art. But
it's what they would have wanted.
Yeah, I think it's more about kind of daily life, hunting and gathering and whatnot. But there are women portrayed as well with kind of circles for boobs, as you would have done as a child, I'd imagine.
Sure.
But I didn't see a lot of John was here. There was some writing,
okay.
There was some text as well. So it's not just images, but didn't seem to be in the way of crudity. It was more hunting and gathering and animals and creatures and what I saw today in the office.
And cars, apparently.
Now, in terms of dating these things, that phasing is a bit of a chicken and egg thing going on, because if you see a picture of a man riding a horse, you date it to when horses were definitely being ridden. But that also arguably tells you that was when horses were being ridden. So how one determines exactly how old these things are, I don't know, although I suspect the car was a bit of a giveaway.
It's the license plate on the back that gave it away.
Yeah, it was dated in 1987. But there are also physical signs, and the older images are what he describes in the book as being re-varnished.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, this confused me. I was reading it going, maybe the artists come in and put in a wash of some kind over it, but no, that's not what it is. Turns out there is a thing called desert varnish or rock varnish, also sometimes known as rock rust or desert patina.
Okay.
And this is found in desert environments all over the world. It's a typical thing you see on rocks in the desert. And this is an orangey yellow to black coating, which you find just on rock surfaces. It's about a micrometer thick. It's a tiny, tiny thin layer of colour, basically, sheen, if you like, varnish, on these rocks. We're not actually sure how it forms. It apparently has high levels of manganese in it, which suggests there might be some microbial activity causing it, but we don't really know. We do know that it forms over thousands of years, so re-varnishing, in the case of rock art in Oman, tells you that's pretty old, because this is a long, slow process. So if you've got extra varnish over an image, you know that has been there a while.
So it's not rock sweat. I mean, I imagined it was some form of perspiration from the rock itself that perhaps would contain minerals within it.
We don't know what it is.
Well, let's just say it's that then.
Yeah, okay.
Say it's that.
Oh, that's the Ryan theory. Let's put it in the pop.
Yeah.
Pop that on
Thank
Wikipedia. Rock sweat. Could be dried rock sweat.
Yeah.
Now, Fossati's book is also a detailed history of people looking at the rocks. And a thing I found interesting was the evolution of techniques to capture the art. So the first recorded mention of the art was a British explorer, a guy called Bertram Sidney Thomas. There's a picture of him nobly striding around on his camel in the book. And he took pictures of the rock, but to pick out the images, he did what they did in those days, which was basically drew over them, coloured them in chalk, just to pick out the colours.
Oh, man. They didn't know better.
Well, he did note that he was quite fastidious. He would brush the chalk off afterwards, so he had a care for the environment. But worse than that, a later practice was people would make the rock wet to bring out the contrast, which, given that being dry was the main reason this stuff had lasted so long, not a great thing to do. Fossati himself describes this as, quote, a technique that is detrimental to the conservation of the figures, which feels a little bit like an understatement to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised people haven't chiselled them out of the wall and taken them away.
Well, I would suspect that might come in time. Let's not advertise that too much. Fossati had a different approach. His guys put a sheet of transparent plastic over the top, and then you trace the images so that you could get a nice copy, essentially, of the art.
Okay.
But time marches on, Ryan, and I found a nice paper from 2018, which was called The Zufar Painted Inscriptions in Oman, Epigraphy and New Technologies, which basically was an algorithm that meant you could take a bunch of pictures of the image and then use various filters and an algorithm to pick out the underlying images to make them much more visible without going near or touching the rock at all. So that's good news for keeping things where they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, in today's technological age, I would expect photography and computers to do a lot of that capture.
Exactly. We've come a long way since lobbing a bucket of water on it and going, look, it's much more visible now.
Yes, exactly.
Work on preserving and recording and understanding the art continues to this day. There's academics like a guy called William Zimmerl, who's the director of the Dhofar Rock Art and Arabian Inscriptions Project. And to keep things current, Ryan, I've brought one of the pictures. I wanted you to see roughly what this looks like. So first of all, if you want to have a look at this.
Ooh. Okay, so it's two figures, simply drawn, both appearing to hold what look like shields and swords.
Yeah, it's pretty kind of basic-y stick figure, isn't it? But I wanted to bring it into the modern age, Ryan, so I've popped that into a online animator. So if you have a look at this version...
Okay. Oh my goodness, he's leaping around. Wow, that's cool. He's just like leaping around with a sword, having a fun old time. It's like he's trying to catch butterflies or something.
Exactly. I quite enjoyed that, so I'll post that as well. It's a little rock art man running around, which I thought was quite fun.
Bringing life to the past.
A contemporary twist on a classic rock art tradition.
I thought they might have been fighting or something, but no, just leaping around like he's having a gay old time.
Yeah, I might try and do a few more because I quite enjoyed doing that. But we'll put the images up on our social media. But if you do want to see some rock art for yourself, there is a whole chapter of Fossati's book entitled Where and How to See Rock Art in Oman. So if you are heading that way, get in touch. We'll give you a few pointers to painting in Oman from a book that started life in 2009.
I've got to say, I think you're onto something with the animated rock art. That's a whole TikTok channel or something. I don't know what it is, but I think you could animate a lot of this stuff.
It really made me laugh when I first saw that guy running around.
Good work. Nice one, Pete.
Thanks, mate.
Hey, have you heard? There's a new painting up on the wall of the Wadi. Everyone's saying it's a Roxy.
Roxy?
Yeah, you know, the mysterious Omani-based street art activist whose identity remains a closely guarded secret.
Oh, him?
Yeah, everyone's talking about it.
Well, what's he done this time?
Well, he painted a hand.
Just a hand, is that it?
Well, I mean, it's not just a hand, is it?
Isn't it?
No, it's art activism. It's a comment on police brutality, isn't it? I mean, I would imagine. It's probably him talking about, you know, the far-reaching and unavoidable hand of the oppressive state. Pretty clever, huh?
Well, if you say so, but hang on, weren't you talking about exactly that the other day?
Was I?
Yeah.
Well, that is a coincidence.
And then what's that on your hand? Is that ochre?
Chocolate.
It looks like ochre to me. Hang on, are you Roxy?
Maybe.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. Right. Well, stop painting all over the rocks. It's ruining the view.
Oh, stop oppressing me. I mean, him. Just you wait. Roxy is going to paint all about this, and it's going to be savage. All right, Peter. Well, there you go. We found painting in Oman during 2007 to 2009, and I think we did a sterling job.
I concur.
Even if I do say so myself.
You're absolutely right, Ryan. It was a brilliant episode.
It was indeed. But, Pete, you know what that means? It is time to wheel out the Derzolator, because the eyes of the audience are swiveling in their sockets towards us.
Well, Ryan, about that.
Yeah? What?
We've got a special event coming up, and I think we should honour it.
What's the special event?
It's football time. You know how much we love football.
Soccer ball? Hooray!
It's the European Cup.
It's the European Cup.
Yes.
God, we love the football, don't we, mate?
We do, and I think we should celebrate the football with the next episode.
It is indeed. It's Euro 2024. So we need to wheel out the soccer later.
There's only so much room to store all these Derzlators that we've got.
Really, we should just have a cartridge or something, like an old Nintendo. Just plug it in.
Like an Atari.
Yeah, exactly.
Blow the cartridge.
All right, well, let's wheel it out and see what we get. So, as I recall from the last Euros that we did, we both get a country and we both get a time, which is one of the tournaments, and also a topic each as well.
That is correct.
Okay, so with it plugged in, Peter, your country is Scotland.
Famously excellent at football and always in the final of a cup. I'm sure they'll be there.
I'm sure they will. Okay, your time period is 1976.
Don't know what to feel about that. I'm going to assume good. It was a hot summer. That's much I can tell you.
Okay. And your topic is no way. Hot.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
I think that's the first time ever you've actually
Just predicted it.
something.
It was a hot summer. I remember there's a photograph of me as a small child in a wheelbarrow full of water trying to stay cool in 1976.
Wow, let's animate that. Okay, Pete, so there you go. You have got Scotland, 1976, and hot.
All right, well, let's do you.
Okay.
The country is Poland.
Okay, Poland. Nice. I like Poland.
Your year is 2008.
I'm sure I watched Euro 2008, so I'm sure there's something in there.
Your topic is... Well, I've seen you wear this regularly, Ryan. Clothing.
You have seen me wear clothing. Not as often as you'd like.
Well, true, since we posed for that portrait.
Okay, so clothing in Poland during Euro 2008.
That's it.
And then you've got hot in Scotland during 1976.
Hot in Scotland is not a good mix, but the rest of it I should be okay for.
All right, it's Euro Special!
Yay! Football.
Championship kickball. Into the goal.
Why do we do this? We are so bad at this.
He scored the winning goal. Hooray.
Kick the ball up the field.
Wingers and strikers and other football related things. All right, well, look, there you go. That was the show for this week. So thank you all for listening. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things that we've talked about on this show, or just to say hello, you can reach out to us through our website at hhepodcast.com or by email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
That's right, we'd love to hear from you, and you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
That's right, and if you are on Mastodon, Instagram, Facebook, or X, and I know you are, you can find us at HHE Podcast.
And if you subscribe to those, you'll get an alert when we post extra content, and there is a smorgasbord to be had. Art, rock art, people's art. We got it all, and we will post some stuff all through the week.
We certainly will. But we will be back again soon with
The Verdict.
But until then, a huge thanks to Karen and George.
Thanks, Karen and George.
And a big thanks to you, Pete.
Thanks, Ryan.
And that is it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
History happened everywhere.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Pete.
I was thinking of redecorating the kitchen. What do you think about Arabian sunset?
Arabian sunset. That sounds nice.
Yeah, or alternatively, we've got mystical hills or golden temple.
Wow. Yeah, they all sound good.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can't decide. I love all three.
Right. Well, why don't we just do all three?
Won't that look a little bit chaotic?
Nah, it'll be awesome. We can have our breakfast in a golden temple, lunch on a mystical hill, and eat dinner under an Arabian sunset.
Wait, you know I'm talking about just the names of paints, right? I'm not saying we turn the kitchen into a literal golden temple.
Oh, right. But imagine if we did.
Ryan, I just want to paint the kitchen, not open a theme park.
Oh, come on, Pete, think about it. We could sell tickets to get into the kitchen, queue to ride the microwave, have our photo taken with our favourite fridge, buy snacks from the cupboards, sit at the table, open the oven door. It'd be amazing.
Ryan, are you feeling okay?
No, not really. No, I think the paint fumes have gone to my head.
Ryan, I haven't bought any paint yet.
But I've been sniffing Tropicana orange all morning.
That's my fruit juice.
Oh, right. Oh, it's a lovely colour, though.
You know what, you're right. Tropicana orange it is.
Yay! Kitchen World is open for business.
Come from Buggins. Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah,
Smash subscribe.
yeah, it's what people say.
Do they though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.